Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another beer from the Vocation's Naughty and Nice selection box. Yes, that's right, it is time for beer number 3 from that box. This time the one that I'm going to call definitely not a TWIX Stout. The official name for this beer, according to the little info card, is the Caramel Cookie Chocolate Stout. Now, to be honest, I've never really considered TWIX to be a cookie, but I guess it is in this fact that it's a biscuit. But anyway, doesn't really matter. Biscuit, caramel and chocolate in a stout. Well, it's not exactly the first time that's been done. There's a very popular Northern Monk beer in some UK supermarkets which is pretty much exactly that description. So yeah, we've seen this before, which kind of means it's got a harder job to impress. The description on this beer though is crunchy cookie and smooth caramel flavours draped in a silky milk chocolate stout. Stick 2 fingers up to thirst. Now, I do believe I mentioned this previously, but sticking 2 fingers up to thirst, well, this beer, being the third in the box, is 8%. So I'm not sure how thirst quenching it's going to be, but I am definitely looking forward to it. Before we break into it then, here is a quick look at the can. I mean, they've got the branding absolutely spot on for all of these, I think it's fair to say. Info in the back as usual, but yeah, let's get into it. In the glass then, unsurprisingly not really very different from the previous two. I think the head out of the 3 is towards the lighter of the set, but otherwise it looks pretty much the same in terms of, well, okay, interestingly, even though we're halfway through at the 8%er, there is actually a tiny bit of red bleeding through at the bottom of this one, so I'm expecting a bit less deep, dark and roasty maybe compared to the others. But to be honest, that does worry me just a little bit because, well, those two weren't exactly deep and brooding to start with, so let's see what happens. So, aromas. It does smell like caramel biscuit. There's no doubt it's very, very sweet caramel forward. Nice biscuity malt base. I'd say it does smell like a TWIX, but I mean TWIXes really aren't the most, I guess, aromatic of chocolates. It's smells quite a lot like a Tunnets caramel wafer, that kind of thing. But the chocolate doesn't smell as quite as sweet on this as it did in the previous Milky Way themed beer, which is probably a good thing because the caramel element is definitely going to bring that back. And also, leave your nose over it for a moment, you do start to get a little bit of that prickly, boozy heat. And there is just a hint of something else in there. It's actually the caramel element. It's starting to bring out a little bit of a vanilla-y quality, and as a result, it smells quite a lot like those little creme caramel things that were very popular, well, certainly in Europe. I'm sure they still are, to be honest, and you can get them in the discount German supermarkets here, at least. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If not, don't worry about it. It's just a bit of a custardy vanilla vibe that's going along with that caramel. So it looks fantastic in the glass still. Head sticking around, which is quite surprising given the ABV. Let's give it a go. Cheers. I mean, I'm smiling, right? I am smiling. It's big, it's sweet, it's masking that ABV like you would not believe. The mouthfeel is good. I would have expected, as these beers climb the ladder in terms of strength, that mouthfeel would also improve. But actually, whilst it's far from saying it's a thin beer, it's possibly not as thick as either of the other two, which, given, as I said before, you can actually pick up a bit of light through it, that might go some way to understanding why that might be. I'm not going to go as far as to say there's definitely not lactose in here. It's still quite thick, it's quite luscious, but if there is lactose in here, there's nowhere near as much as there was in the previous two. Flavour-wise, I mean, it is big caramel biscuit. It is suffering a little bit from the same discretion that the previous beer made, which was that there's no big roastiness. I would have liked maybe a bit more depth, a bit more of that deep dark roast malt flavour to come through. But to be fair to them, they advertised you a beer that tastes like a caramel biscuit covered in chocolate, and quite frankly I can't take much away from them on that part, because, well, that is exactly what it tastes like. It's certainly not necessarily the best beer with those flavour profiles in terms of my personal enjoyment, but find me an 8% beer that goes down as smoothly as that does, with the drinkability that that has, I think you'd be hard pressed, to be honest. Right then, let me just empty the rest of this can into the glass and we'll do a quick top to bottom taste test. So initially, very, very light carbonation on the front of the tongue. Lightly sweet, little biscuity. To be honest, up front, it's not that big and brash. There's a few tips of the hat of all of those flavours, but it's not really impactful. Middle of the palate's where this really starts to come alive. You get a bit of caramel, you get a bit of vanilla, as I said, that kind of creme caramel vibe that it's got, and then on the swallow is where this really wakes up. Lashings of milk chocolate, although not too sweet, because then you came in with a wave of very sweet caramel and a nice, pretty plain biscuity finish. It's got plenty going on, but as I said before, and as with the previous beer, it's almost too friendly. It's very good, but it's very, I don't know, it's a bizarre thing to say, because you would think, why would you want a drink that's challenging? But almost that's some of the joy in some beers, that you go through a slightly challenging set of flavours until you start to work what they are comprised of and start to break it down a bit. There's nothing really to break down here. It's almost boozy chocolate milk, which I have no problem with, but missing a little bit of beer characteristic. And despite all that, it still puts a massive smile on my face, so I'm not complaining too much. Let's take a look at the can. On the front then it says Vocation Special Edition 8% Naughty and Nice Caramel Cookie Chocolate Stout, and on the back it goes on to say Naughty and Nice, our signature chocolate stout wrapped up in the flavours of everyone's most loved chocolate treats, fit for any festive celebration, as it says on all of these cans. The tasting notes according to them on this are caramel, chocolate and biscuit, unsurprisingly, and it says crunchy cookie and smooth caramel flavours draped in a silky milk chocolate stout, stick 2 fingers up to thirst. We've already heard that. There's no information here that we didn't already know. All the same info on the back as everything else. But I'm just going to dive into the ingredients list, which they don't give full ingredients for, but they do give allergens, just to see if there's anything we haven't seen in any of the other beers. And on this one, it's malted barley, oats, and lactose. I'm surprised it's oats and lactose, given it just seemed a little bit thinner than the other beers, but, well, it is what it is. So this has now been opened for about 15-20 minutes since the start of recording, so has it actually changed, developed, or anything? The nose becomes more creme caramel, custard, vanilla forward. Undoubtedly it's still a bit Twixy, chocolate, caramel, biscuit, but yeah, the dominating flavour, once it's been open for a bit, really is that creme caramel vibe, and that's also starting to peek through a little bit more in the flavour. Whether there's actually any vanilla added to this or not, I don't know, or whether it's just a bit of a byproduct of the other ingredients that have gone into it, because they're all kind of in a very similar taste profile sphere. But I think my conclusion on this one is it does exactly as advertised. It's a little bit shallow if you're wanting properly dark, rich, strong ale, and out of the three, this kind of ties with the previous one, the Milky Way one. It's not quite as one-dimensional as that, but it has a similar flatness when it comes to the malt profile. This is a maltier beer because of the biscuit element, but it doesn't have any of that dark roastiness that I really want, just a little hint of, even if it's only a tiny bit in a high ABV stout, and it's just not quite there. I'm not going to go as far as to say I would be disappointed had I bought this as a one-off, but undoubtedly the price would be quite high, and yeah, I don't know. It's very nice. If you like Twixes, if you like biscuit, caramel and chocolate, you are not going to go away from this going, that was awful. It tastes absolutely delicious, but just a little bit more of depth, earthy complexity for me would have made it absolutely perfect. And that is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already subscribed, if you will be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.